Hi and welcome back to the channel. In this video I wanted to discuss my thoughts on the Sigma 56mm f1.4 for Fujifilm X-mount cameras and whether it is capable of producing magic in your photography or whether, being a third-party lens, it's a bit second-rate. As I continue to do these YouTube videos, my thoughts on equipment and the tech specs and what is desirable in a piece of kit have sort of changed over the time. And I think I initially was somebody who would really be looking at all of the specs, and if I could zoom in to 200 or 300% and see mega detail and the technical, chromatic aberration and all of those aspects to the lens, if they were brilliant, then that was what excited me. And then as I have looked into things more and sort of stood back and assessed why anybody would have a particular lens or a piece of kit, other aspects of their performance have come more into view, and the tech specs sit beside or alongside all of the other aspects to a piece of kit. I think photography technology has progressed so far nowadays that even the bad things aren't that bad, and looking back 50, 60 years, people were producing amazing photographs with equipment that probably doesn't stand up in the modern tech war or tech spec war. And so I think we're sort of pushed into this thing where the marketing people persuade us that we need all of these technological advances, and some of them are brilliant, obviously, and some of them maybe aren't. It's a bit like having a car that can do 2 or 3 times the speed limit on roads that are jam-packed with traffic. It seems desirable, and lots of people want a car that is mega fast, but then you can't actually use it, and you're paying loads of money and upgrading your current kit for something that isn't actually getting you any more benefits. So it's interesting to look at lenses and equipment that isn't maybe the top tier and just try and decide whether it's actually enough for you and that it can do all that you need it to do. It's weird because the word enough never really sounds that exciting, does it? I mean, if something is, oh, that's good enough, it sounds like it's not good enough, because the way we've been made to understand that sort of phrase, everything's got to be at the top tier and everything. But anyway, that's one of the thoughts that I had when trying to start thinking about the Sigma 56mm. I think what sort of photography you actually do and what the end product is that you're aiming for is very important when trying to assess whether you get top tier lenses or budget lenses. For my personal photography, I mainly use my Fujifilm cameras, and I mean, there is a bit of a crossover between that and my work, because sometimes I use Fujifilm cameras because of their low profile and you can sort of be less noticed. But mainly I'm using it for my personal stuff, and with that personal stuff I'm more likely to want to color grade in a more sort of atmospheric or not processed, but well, I suppose it is processed. I can sort of take things in my own direction and put my own artistic sort of thoughts into the picture much more than when I'm working for a client on my interiors. I have to look for the specs of a lens. It has to be sharp right across the lens into the corners, and I need there to be as little distortion in a lens, and I don't want there to be any chromatic aberrations or anything like that, or flare, so that the picture is very much a technical view of what I'm trying to photograph for the client. So there's a sort of slightly different bias in the equipment I use. So it is important to look at those things. But with the Fuji system, a lot of people do use it for their own work or street photography, and a lot of that has an artistic side to it. So the actual, is it the sharpest lens, and all of that sort of thing is maybe not as important as it is if you're doing very critical and has to reflect exactly the sort of product that you're doing and all that sort of photography for a client. So actually getting onto the Sigma 56mm f1.4, I'm not really well, not at all. I'm not a portrait photographer. I have done portraits, and I initially got the lens because I wanted to try and do some wedding photography, and I had the 18mm Fujifilm lens and the 33mm Fujifilm lens, and I wanted something slightly longer. So I looked long and hard at the Fujifilm 56 f1.2 in both the first and the second iterations, and was trying to work out whether I should get those. But I did come across the Sigma, and although the Fujifilm has the f1.2 aperture, so you can go even more creamy and everything with the bokeh and the background, and it does have an aperture ring, which is obviously highly desirable in the Fujifilm ecosystem. The fact that the Fujifilm is about 2.5 times as much money as the Sigma, and also the Sigma is actually really, really small and lightweight, so that was a factor when I was choosing it. And the fact that it doesn't have an aperture ring is something that I would like it, but I've used Sony cameras for a long time, so I'm quite happy using the front command dial for aperture control, so it doesn't really bother me. And there's sort of a little benefit of not having an aperture ring when you're putting the camera in and out of a bag. It doesn't get knocked, so you don't pull it out and think, oh, what's going on, and have to readjust it, because some of the Fujifilm aperture rings are quite sort of easy to move when you're not thinking about it. So the Sigma lens is actually, I'll just read it off here, is 285 grams, and it has a diameter of 66.5mm, and it is 57.5mm long, which compares to the Fujifilm 56 f1.2 is 445 grams, and it's 79.4mm in diameter, so it's quite a little bit wider, 13mm. I mean, not that much wider, but hey-ho. And it's 76mm long. So although it's not a massive lens by any means, it is substantially bigger than the Sigma. So when I first took the lens out of the box, I was actually really surprised, and it felt quite a dense and quite a high quality piece of kit, really. And the fact that it was a plastic build and everything didn't really seem to be to any detriment. It just feels like a solid little lens. So the lens does come with a this quite robust plastic lens hood, and something that I found is that without the lens hood there is quite a lot of strange flaring in certain situations. A really bright red line appears when the sun is sort of above more so at wide apertures, and I definitely recommend putting the lens hood on. As far as focusing goes, I was comparing it to the Fujifilm 33mm, and on things where I was focusing from mid-distance to slightly further away, there's not that much in it, to be honest. Maybe slightly more snappy on the Fujifilm first-party lens. Where this struggles a little bit more is if you're focusing from extreme distance to very close, it seems to take slightly longer to get all the way back. But you know, it's not really designed as a sports lens or anything like that, is that a thing? The Fujifilm 56mm apparently, I mean, I've never actually tried one, and I want to try one because I've heard such great things about it, but you know, that's never been touted as a lens to take to a sports event or anything. These lenses, this 56mm on the APS-C sensor, is the 85mm equivalent on a full frame, and is really a portrait lens, and a lens designed to, you know, maybe do things at a slightly more relaxed sort of pace. So the focusing I found not really a problem at all. So getting to the sort of meat of the whole issue, can this lens produce magic and produce photos that you think, wow, that's cool, and I'm glad I've got this lens? Or is it all going to be disappointment and sort of longing for the Fujifilm 56mm. So I thought I'd go into the computer and show you some images that I've taken that give us an idea of how the lens performs. And as I haven't got the 56mm, it might be a weird comparison. Just to see of a bit of extra interest, I had my Sony a7R5 with the Sony 85mm f1.8 on, and I thought I'd do a few tests where I'd take similar pictures and see how they look, because it's sort of quite an interesting thing to compare the different sensor sizes, and you know, I thought I'd give you a sort of almost two for the price of one video and just give us something to compare and see how this one goes. So let's jump into the computer and we can have a look at some images. I was going to just start with this image of some trees in a forest near me, and this was at sort of sunset time, and so we get these lovely warm colours. And this was one of the things that I compared with the Sony a7R5 and the 85mm f1.8, and I was surprised at how similar they are. This is the Fujifilm with the 56mm lens on, and this is the similar image with the Sony setup. So if I flick between them, obviously there's slightly differences in colour, but what I wanted to look at is things like, if I zoom into this branch here, how the out of focus areas behave, and then looking at the full frame option, it's sort of quite similar, to be honest. Here's another image that I took of the similar place, just a slightly different angle, and I've sort of tried to process them the same. Yeah, again, I was very pleased with how the lens performed, and also the Fujifilm X-T5 with its 40 megapixel APS-C size sensor to the A7R5 with its 61 megapixel full frame sensors. When I was up in London, I took this shot. This is at f8, so there's loads of detail in here. I haven't sharpened this image, or I haven't added any sharpening, so you know, there's tons of detail. I'm now looking at it at 369%. I don't know why I'm doing that, but even at 100%, that's more sort of sensible. It's a beautiful image, and this lens works really well when you stop it down, so that's really good to know. And again here, I really love the way this building's rendered with this edit that I did. So that was again showing how lovely the lens works at an aperture of f8. So unfortunately for you, the next example is a self-portrait of myself. This is with the Fujifilm and the Sigma 56 in the sun. Not the best photo in the world, but I just wanted to show you how it works as a reasonably close-up portrait lens, and things like, you know, you can zoom in here and there's plenty of detail. I'm not sure whether it actually, I think it did catch focus on my eye. Maybe tricky because my eyes were shaded in the from the sun slightly, and wearing glasses. But again, I was quite pleased with how, if I change over to the next image, this is the Sony. In terms of how the details work and how the roll-off works from the two different systems, I was very pleased with how they stand up, or how the Sigma f1.4 stands up to the Sony f1.8 full frame. So, you know, it's quite a good, interesting test to do these things. I did another portrait just on the Sigma to show you how, when your background is quite a way away, how it just dissolves away at 1.4. And again, excuse me zooming in, loads of detail in the eyes there. And looking at this, I haven't added any sharpness to the picture, so if I did crank up a bit of sharpness, I'm not quite sure whether you can see that, but you know, it's plenty sharp enough. I went on an outing with my wife and my grandson, and there's a local woods, and they have this Gruffalo trail, this again at f3.2, and the lens works really well and renders things really, really nicely. Later that day, I took a shot that I definitely think has a magic about it. And this is my grandson again, and no sharpening added here, but it's just such a beautiful picture. Not from a sort of egotistical, I took a beautiful picture. I just really love how it turned out, and the way his skin looks so soft, but there's, you know, plenty of detail in his eyes as well, and I was really, really pleased with this. I wasn't really even trying, we were just playing in the kitchen and managed to take this. And then I did an edit in Luminar Neo, which I do use from time to time, and I've got a preset in there that I worked on quite a bit for black and white. It's called soft black and white portrait, and I did a version of that, and I really love how that renders this as well. And it's got automatic eye brightening slightly, and yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's just a really lovely result from this lens. And the question of can it produce magic, for me personally, I think it can, in well, not even in the right circumstances. There's very few times that I've used this lens and thought, oh, that's a bit rubbish. And again, when I was out with my grandson, this one I didn't really even catch focus, but it just has this lovely rendering with the out of focus background, and he was sort of giving me a cheeky little look, and I thought that was really nice. And again, here, I mean, you can see I did catch focus on his eyelashes there, so it seems completely fine in terms of is it sharp enough, and the out of focus areas are really nice. I was just going to show you that one with the bokeh shape. So off to the edge, it's a bit cat's eye, but in the middle, it's very round, and it just looks fine to me. And the punch and the difference between the in focus areas and the out of focus areas is really, really nice. And I think, you know, you'd be hard pushed if that was in a load of photographs with other lenses. You wouldn't be thinking, oh, that's rubbish, and I wish you'd bought a more expensive lens. When I was up in London, I took this shot of this guy walking across the Waterloo footbridge, and yeah, this focal length for street photography, wouldn't call myself a street photographer by any means, but it's quite handy to be able to sort of pick out your subject and isolate them using the f1.4 aperture. And then I did use this lens quite a few times at this particular wedding, and I wanted to show you some what I thought were really lovely photos that the lens managed to produce. Again, lovely detail and nice drifting off into the background, and just a nice rendering of the scene. And here I was shooting through some leaves to get these sort of patches and everything, and I thought that was a nice shot. This old railway bridge that has obviously been graffitied, but it just produces a really nice rough background to the couple getting married. Things like this, again, really nice detail on this vicar waiting for the bride. You can see all the detail on his hair and everything, but nice out of focus areas as well. So yeah, and I did actually take it up to London and do some of my panning shots and my moving camera work, and it worked really well there as well. Yeah, so all in all, I mean, going back to that's one of my favourite pictures, and really happy with the way that this lens has performed for me. And I don't find myself thinking I wish it was anything more, apart from I guess this flaring that you do get without the lens hood. And I think it's even probably prone to not the best lens if you're shooting into really bright light. So that maybe is something, if that's your bag, maybe you should look elsewhere. But apart from that, I found it a really lovely lens to use, and the weight and everything it makes it really something that you think, oh, I just whack that on and off I go. Yeah, I hope you liked those pictures and it gave you an idea of what this lens can do. So to sum up then, I am really happy with this lens. It's produced some images that I think have a magic about them. So I don't have any regrets in purchasing this over any other lens. And I'm sure that there are other third-party lenses from Viltrox or TT Artisans or whoever it is that can, in the right circumstances, produce images that you're really, really happy with. So if you want a lens that it's very possible to produce some lovely images, and it's very reasonably priced, it's small and lightweight, then go for this and you won't be disappointed. If you want to do more research, hire a Fujifilm lens or get it on the Fujifilm loan scheme. You can get the lenses for a couple of days free from Fujifilm. So that's really worth trying to do, or trying to get friendly with a local camera shop and try out a few different lenses as well. But I think this is a great option for the reasons I've said earlier. When I sat down to start making this video, I was struck with what a great thing it is to be able to just sit here and chat to whoever about cameras and what a wonderful thing that is. So I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And if you can click the like button and subscribe, that would be brilliant and help me get further and further down my YouTube journey, and I'd really appreciate that. Until the next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.